So a couple of things. A lot of people in my community have had breast cancer, and they're on aromatase inhibitors or some sort of an after chemo drug. You had mentioned at one point how this might be beneficial to them. Can you speak to that?
I can. I have numerous people who are attending the bone clinic, and because they're recovering from breast cancer, but breast cancer has destroyed their bones, we are absolutely able to help them rebuild their bones. It's going to be an individual thing. It's going to be up to how they're feeling. It will depend on where they are in their treatment, but it absolutely has improved people's bones who have had breast cancer and aromatase inhibitors.
Thank you. Everyone's waiting for your opinion on Osteoboost.
Well, because you mentioned that, I actually created a slide for it, and just so that everybody's on the same page, this is the FDA announcement that Osteoboost belt, this is vibration belt, indicated to reduce the decline in bone strength and volumetric bone density in postmenopausal women with osteopenia of lumbar vertebrae. Okay, so this, I'm not expecting you to read all this. I just put this is the abstract. So this is the evidence on which the FDA made their decision. Now, there is no peer-reviewed publication, so you won't find a publication of this unless something has come out just recently of this study in a peer-reviewed journal. This was presented at the Endocrine Society conference. So when you submit a conference abstract, it gets looked at by the conference committee or abstract reviewers, and it's probably one person or maybe two who just says, yes, that's interesting, yes, you may present it. There is no real peer review on the whole design and methodology of the study because you don't have enough detail in an abstract to be able to assess that. So this is not a public peer-reviewed publication, and I don't think anybody should look at it that way. It has not been fully scrutinized. Secondly, 8 out of the 9 authors have a serious conflict of interest. So they're either stockholders, consultants, or employed by the maker of the device.
Okay, that's a conflict. For those that don't know, this is a belt that goes around your waist, above your hip, that vibrates and is supposed to be working on your osteopenia.
Yeah. The abstract clearly states that intent to treat analysis. So this is the appropriate analysis for a randomized controlled trial. Intention to treat is you analyze the difference between groups, the difference in effect between either the intervention or control from the beginning of the trial to the end of the trial. And they clearly say intent to treat analysis revealed no significant difference in percent change in vertebral bone strength between the active and sham groups over 12 months. Just let that settle. Then they dug into, and this is what everybody does, they dug into their data and they did a fishing trip. They went looking to see if they could find something. If they looked in the vibration group that was aged between 50 and 60, they found that they had less loss than the control group, but they weren't able to find the same difference between groups in people over 60. Okay, so this is less loss. This is not building bone. And a subgroup analysis is normally not powered to actively, to really truly look at that with any level of scientific rigor. So on that grounds, they concluded that Osteoboost holds promise. Now, if you say something holds promise, that means that we don't know yet. And even they said, we don't know yet. There's some suggestion that it may help from this weird little sub-analysis they did that was probably underpowered. For some unknown reason, the US FDA decided that that was enough evidence for them to accept it. Now, I will leave that for you to make a decision about.
Okay, so I think I'm reading you loud and clear with that. Couple of things. Strontium. What's happening in the United States is that people are using strontium in high dose, 680 milligrams versus calcium. Have you seen any of that? Have you seen bones that are strontium bones versus calcium-rich bones?
No, I haven't. And I'm probably going to stay in my lane on that one
All right,
because,
fair enough. Okay.
yes.
All right. Okay, then how about yoga for osteoporosis?
Hmm. So my mantra is the best exercise for a person is the exercise that they will do. There's no doubt about that. If somebody won't do Onero, then that's not the exercise for them. However, yoga does not improve bone mass. It's possible that someone with extremely low bone mass who has never done anything, they're just off the couch, may benefit to a certain extent, but it would be most unusual. And I've never seen any good quality data to suggest that yoga can improve bone mass. There is also some evidence that the deep forward flexion that occurs in many of the yoga poses is dangerous and can cause vertebral fractures. Having said that, yoga can be good for improving balance. So I'm not writing yoga off. I think yoga is fantastic exercise and probably should be used as something that can help prevent falls and keep people doing something, anything, but stay away from those deep forward flexion exercises and don't think that it's improving your bones. It's really just preventing falls.
And
Maybe.
Okay, but that's pretty key as far as preventing falls and balance. That's a gift from the yoga world.
Sure.
Okay, let's talk about Echolite. I heard that you have a slightly different opinion than when I met you last time. I would like to show you, if I may. So this was my DEXA in 2022. It looks now I'm not a densitometrist, but it looks pretty solid as far as the numbers. I have bones of a teenager, my T-score. And I have been going along merrily with this and thinking, oh, this is great. All I'm doing, everything is working. And then I had the Echolite and it showed quite the contrary. So I apparently have osteoarthritis and the DEXA was not picking that up. It was actually making the bones look stronger. So that's my experience. I think it's important to do both tests because DEXA still is the gold standard, but it does show that I have osteoporosis in the lower, excuse me, in these two vertebrae. So I'm just wondering what your thought is on, how do I go back on Echolite right now?
So unfortunately, the student that was going to be doing the validation study for me has not been able to do that this year. So I did have a project set up to do a cross, not validation so much as a cross calibration between my Echolite device and a couple of different DEXAs. I think one of my concerns about REMS and Echolite is that we don't know exactly what it's measuring because, way back in the day when ultrasonometers came onto the market, and these were the ones that were using scanning through the heel, nobody could tell us what it was measuring, and it came down to this term called bone quality because it's not measuring BMD. It's not a measure of bone mineral density. It appears to be related to the connectivity of the trabeculae. So it's more the physical structures that are reflecting the scores that you get from an ultrasound machine. So when REMS came along, Echolite, and they have a plot that looks just like a BMD plot, and they call it BMD, I was instantly, the scientist brain instantly went on alert. How can they say it's BMD when it's not actually measuring BMD? Now, I understand that it is, it's been developed based on sort of the same thinking as a 3D shaper. And that's what made me start thinking, okay, well, I can understand that. That makes sense to me. And so I'm certainly willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I also recognize that your experience where osteoarthritis probably inflated your DEXA score, it can be very misleading. But I think it's the reason why the WHO originally used the femoral neck for their osteoporosis definition, to try and get away from that influence. So probably scanning your hip would have been a good sort of at the same time would have been a good way to check that. But your hips was okay.
Yeah. Yes, but that's really never talked about. So interesting that you bring that point up, because we don't know. We're just innocent bystanders of the DEXA, and the DEXA comes to script, and we don't know how accurate the DEXA is as far as the spine is concerned. So that's a very, very interesting point. So I feel, as I said, I feel comfortable getting both to get a better view on things, but thank you. The other question that I have is Pilates for osteoporosis.
Yeah, so that's when I mentioned the MedXOP trial, we used the Buff Bones program, which is essentially a Pilates program with a little bit of impact inserted into it. And we found that the group who was allocated to twice a week supervised Pilates lost 1.5% BMD at the spine. So Pilates is low intensity and oftentimes not weight bearing. So it's not indicated as an osteoporosis exercise program. However, again, my mantra, if that's the only thing that somebody will do, they should do it. Just be careful. And certainly Pilates is fantastic for all number of other things. So you're getting benefits in other areas, and possibly some falls prevention benefit, but it is not a bone loading program.
Okay, Vicki, did you have any questions from our audience?
We do. I'll try to combine a couple that sort of match one another. Here's one. If someone trips and falls and fractures a bone, does that indicate osteoporosis, or is it a trauma-related fall, not indicative of osteoporosis?
Yeah, that's normally considered to be a low trauma fall. So that would be normally considered an osteoporotic fracture. If they trip and fall 5 stories, that's a high trauma fracture. But if they just fall from standing height, that's normally considered, because you wouldn't expect to fracture if you fell from that height normally. So yes, and the doctor will ask a series of questions that will drill down on to whether that is an osteoporotic fracture or not.
After the initial 2-year supervised Liftmor program, how do you recommend someone continues these Liftmor exercises at home?
So there's the Liftmor program is not a 2-year program. This is for life. Bone is a use it or lose it tissue. If you stop doing it, you're going to lose the gains that you got, not as rapidly as if you come off Prolia, but over time you will lose the bone. So this is a program that you really just have to assume is going to be for life, and luckily it's good for all your other tissues as well. So it's good for your heart and brain and metabolism. The question, can you do it at home, is no. That's the simple answer. They showed the evidence today that supervision is key. This is a high intensity program. And even if you learn how to do it, sort of 10 years on, I still have somebody supervising me, because you have to have your head in a certain position where you can't be watching yourself in the mirror. And small changes in position can have huge differences in risk. So it is a supervised program.
Vicki, before you go on to the next question, for the New Jersey, Pennsylvania people, there's an Onero in Somerset, New Jersey, that one of the people Doreen had gone to, and I know several people have referred several people to that facility, and they rave about Dr. Claudia and her program. So that's in Somerset, New Jersey, and it's about, well, I can't tell you where it is because I don't know where you live. Okay, Vicky, go ahead.
Okay, so there are a couple of people wanted to know about what are the qualifiers to become an Onero trainer, and how long does it take to become certified in Onero?
Yeah, great question. So you just need to have some background in some training, qualifications in exercise and clinical applications. So that really, in Australia, that means a physiotherapist or physical therapist, as you guys call them, or an accredited exercise physiologist. Now, in the US, there are other programs of training that give people similar sort of qualifications. So I'm happy to talk to people. One of my licensees in San Diego has a different kind of degree, but I'm very confident that she has excellent expertise and she'll be great. So overseas, I'm willing to talk to people about this. It is all online training. It takes about 6 hours. It's really, you just need to have space. But this is a conversation that I'm having with people. I probably talk to about 6 people a week about how to get involved. You can go to the Onero Academy site and get some information there. Otherwise, just contact me and I can help.
But that, you touch on a key point, which is, it was quickly mentioned, that they have to have space. Oftentimes, the physical therapists in the United States, they have little cubicles. And to have a room, which would be ideal, that the trainer could actually, or the physical therapist could actually watch. But this is so important for us ladies to knock on doors if we know physical therapists and say, hey, how about getting a license in this program so you can help the 4.1 million women, people who are turning 65 this year, and also our own selves. So we need some in New York. I actually reached out to a couple of physical therapists in New York, Belinda. I do those cold calls, knocking on doors, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I might have been a little too early, but I mean, I just will continue with that. And Vicky, before you go on, from Karen had asked, she happens to live near one of the Onero Academy locations in Danville, California, called Helix PT. Am I asking them for Onero training? Do I need a referral from a physician?
No, you can, it depends what your health system is like over there and whether you can get some reimbursement or something, in which case,
So going back to the question that Karen was asking, does she need a physician, does she need a note from the doctor?
I tell you what I'm going to do, because I just got a message on my screen that my internet connection is unstable. I'm going to turn off my video to just but I can turn it back on later.
Okay.
So the answer to the question is, depending on your healthcare system, you may or may not need a referral. If you want some reimbursement in Australia, you do need a referral. I would strongly recommend that if you live near Danville, you see Wes. He's fantastic. I met him in person at our in-service in California. He's absolutely the right guy to be delivering Onero, who's our very first in California. He is your guy. If you live near him, you're very lucky. He is offering Onero.
All right, Karen, well done. All right, Vicky, what else do you have?
Okay, so were you also doing a Liftmor study? And
Yeah.
has that concluded? And sort of what is it?
Yeah, so Videmore was a study that I was doing with Clint Rubin, actually, because he has a vibrating plate, as you would be aware, and we were testing it in a large-scale trial to see if we could see if it's efficacious, because all the trials to then in osteoporotic women had not been particularly impressive. It is finished. We're in the process of analysing those data. The first sweep through with an intention to treat analysis that I was talking about with Osteoboost did not show an effect. So we're just looking at some analyses where we look at whether somebody actually used it or not, because the intention to treat doesn't take that into account. So yeah, the jury is still out. I will definitely be posting those results, certainly publishing them, but keep your eye on the Bone Clinic website, because I do post our research results there.
Okay. And this sort of follows about Clinton Rubin. Do you feel the Maradyne whole body vibration plate is effective?
Yeah, well, that's jury is still out on
Still
that.
out. Okay.
That's exactly the one we tested. So it
Yeah.
was 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 9 months, and we had 250 people or something like that in the study, 4 groups. So it was a decent study. If we should be able to get results from that, and I'll report those.
Okay. One other thing, how many days a week do you recommend your program and for how long?
Twice a week for life.
Twice a week for life. There we go.
And Belinda, would you just mention the name of the gentleman in Danville?
Wes, yeah. I think Wes Anderson, I think. If you go to the Onero map, so just Google Onero locations, click on the map, scroll to the Bay Area, and his little red marker will come up. Click on the marker and all his contact details will come up.
But are you saying Wiz or Wes?
I'm saying Wes in the Australian way, which is Wes.
Okay, got it. And Mary Beth just posted the link in the chat. Wes Anderson. Okay. All right, Vicki, what else do you have?
Well, basically, people want to know if they go to their physical therapist, what can they bring with them? Like, is there a packet of information to provide to them or refer them to the website?
Yeah, good question. So probably the best thing would be to refer them to the Onero Academy website. Yeah. So just type in Onero Academy. It'll come in and come up on a Google search. And it's a very simple URL.
Okay.
But I want to reiterate before Vicki, excuse me, reiterate that we have the power to change this, to bring this forward in a bigger way. It's just a question of asking and then follow up. So go ahead, Vicki.
One other question about if you're doing the Onero program supervised, is it also recommended on the days off to maybe do the Onero online program?
Also a great question. And yes, and many of our bone clinic clients are doing that because, as I said, it is a falls focused program and you cannot have enough balance training. It's the most recent recommendations say that you need about 3 hours of balance training a week for 6 months to really see the effect. So yeah, that's why we've included balance and mobility into the Onero program, in addition to the Liftmor program, because it gives people skills and those kinds of exercises you can do at home. So yes, the Onero online as well as Onero, absolutely, I would be doing both.
So we have one person who's been doing Osteostrong and now she's very confused and wonders if she should switch to Onero. Without
question.
Okay.
That was pretty strong.
That was, yeah.
That was
well,
strong.
If you look, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, I don't want to undercut anybody else's business model, but I do feel quite strongly that we showed it doesn't work and we showed that it was dangerous. And I worry that there are many people in the osteoporosis demographic who have left the economy. They don't have a lot of money to spare. In Australia, Osteostrong is very expensive. They can absolutely be putting their money somewhere that would work and would be safe.
Okay. There's one here. Does the amount of weight lifted increase your entire life? I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Yeah, that means that you don't stop. But you do. And I wanted to ask you this, Belinda, the 85% of your weight, 85% is the 85%, if you could break that down into regular language.
Yeah, sure. So 1 RM stands for 1 repetition max. And in lifting lingo, that means the amount of weight that you can lift, the maximum amount of weight you can lift once. So you lift it once and you couldn't lift it one more time. So that's heavy and we don't recommend that. What we want is that you're lifting roughly 80 to 85% of that. Now, it's not the reason why, one of the reasons why you need supervision is because you need someone to help you figure that out. And there are all kinds of ways to do that. And we have strategies that we teach our Onero providers to do that. So it is important that you're doing that. Otherwise, you're not going to be gaining benefits. However, well, not be growing bone. I shouldn't say gaining benefits, because my however is it takes a while for people to get there. If you've never lifted anything ever, then you are not going to be lifting 85% 1RM straight away. You're probably going to be in the 50 range. We start with broomsticks at the clinic, you know, and we start with stuff that everybody can lift. It's light as a feather, just to make sure that you get the technique right. And I often see people walk into the clinic and they look at a class as they're walking past to their console and they say, well, that's not going to be me. And within a couple of months, that's them. It's, you know, you have no idea what you're able to lift until you actually try. And the thing is, we're not talking Arnold Schwarzenegger. 85% 1RM is your individual amount. So somebody who's 65 is probably going to be lifting a higher weight than someone who's 95, because 80% of their maximum is very different. So it is absolutely calibrated to the individual. People often say, what amount should I be lifting? Well, that is 100% an individual thing.
Vicky, you see Tracy's question at the bottom?
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah. So could you share the most relevant research content links with us so that we can share them with the PTs that we're talking with? Also, can you summarize again how one begins the process or becomes certified?
Yeah. So I'm just I'm wondering whether I can trying to get out of my presentation so that I can go to my list of maybe I should just send them to you. I wrote an invited perspectives for exercise science reviews in 2022, I think, and it is a really nice little summary of why we're doing what we're doing and where that research comes from. So that's probably, if there was one paper that somebody should read, that probably sums it up in a nutshell. So I'll send you a copy of that and the link. And then the answer to the other part of the question is tell people to contact me. Now, I'm happy for people to just email me, and I'm just belinda@theboneclinic.com.au. But also, in the first instance, it's probably worth them going to the Onero Academy and looking through that page and reading in there, because they will quickly find out whether it's for them or not from those details.
Vicky, can you put the Onero Academy in the chat for Tracy? Would that be all right?
Sure.
Weighted vests, are they safe? Now, what is your thought on weighted vests, Belinda?
It's a bit of a piece of string question, because it definitely depends on the person. I am pretty certain that I wouldn't be putting my -6 T-score client in a weighted vest just because they are too frail. But somebody who was reasonably robust and the only exercise they were willing to do was walking, absolutely whack a weighted vest on them, because it increases the intensity a little bit. And because walking by itself is not going to increase bone mass, but you got more chance of growing bone if you've got this added weight on. I've just pasted in the Onero Academy link for you there.
Okay, thank you. So Debbie was clarifying her question. If I lift 85% of my 1RM, say 10 pounds, when I'm 65 years old, should I expect to lift more than that when I'm 75 years old and 85 years old?
I would be willing to bet that you would be, yeah, definitely. Unless there was something that happened in those 10 years that prevented you from being healthy and standing on your own 2 feet. Yes, you will improve from where you start. the most at the start, and then you'll begin to plateau. And there'll come a time where you can't lift anymore because physically you're just not able to. We all have our max. That's what a personal best is. But sticking with that personal best, which is still going to be very hard for you, that's what's creating the stimulus.
And Vicky, I'm just going to go with Sheila's question. She said in your study, your data said that there were 28 fractures in the control group. Could you tell us about that, please?
I'm sorry. Could you ask me that question one more time?
In your study, your data said there were 28 fractures in the control group. Could you tell us about that?
Oh, no, that's not what that slide said. There were 28 injuries. There had been 28 injuries in that group of 400 people that I was presenting the Liftmor, the Onero data from the clinic. So 28 injuries, they were primarily soft tissue, just people having strains and sprains. So nothing dramatic, certainly in those soft tissue injuries. However, we have had 3 fractures in the time, so in 9 years. So as you can imagine, that is a very, very small number for hundreds of thousands of Onero sessions. And those fractures, the first fracture we had was one of our coaches was doing a very questionable balance exercise, hopping side to side, and it was way too difficult. And somebody rolled their ankle and fractured the bottom of their fibula. The next one, somebody walked onto the gym floor before the coach was there, tripped over a bar, fell and broke her wrist. And then the next one, the only one that is really related to lifting, was when we often pair people up when they're lifting because it helps them to rest between sets. And a woman forgot to take the extra 10 kilos off the bar before she lifted her weight. So she lifted something that was too heavy for her. So those were the only 3 fractures that we've had. And each one of them was, I call all of them our fault because we should have managed the situation where that couldn't happen. But it's a very, very low injury rate, fracture rate.
So that was an important question because for anybody to walk away from this presentation with that understanding, so Sheila, thank you for asking, would think, well, I don't know, 28 fractures, I don't know. So because we come to this space with some fear about lifting. Now, Miro is asking, please let us know how many days a week you recommend your program and for how long.
Twice a week, rest of your life.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I continue to collect data at the clinic is because we don't know the exact dose response that is required. We just know from our clinical trials that twice a week was effective. We don't know if once is enough, and we don't know if 3 times is better. You must have a day of rest in between because your muscles need to recover. But I would be willing to bet that once a week is absolutely better than nothing. I would stake my firstborn on that. I'm not willing to bet that 3 times a week is better than twice, but it might be. So the more data I have, the more I'll be able to answer that question.
So Belinda's email, Vicky, thank you very much for putting that in the chat. Karen was asking a question. I'm trying to find Karen. Where are you, Karen? Let me scroll back down. Karen, could you recommend what type of an exercise person would do to build bones? Is it deadlifts? Can you recommend what type of exercise person, maybe it's program, would do? Is it deadlifts that you're primarily talking about? I know that we don't talk about the program itself because you don't want people to do it on your own, but primarily what you were showing were images of deadlifts.
Yeah, I don't talk about the program itself because I don't want people to think that they're safe for them to do by themselves. And so, yeah, those are the kinds of questions that I don't answer. But I can confirm that they are compound lifts, so they're complex. They use most of the muscles in the body, and they are technical and do require training.
So Monica says, I'm so encouraged. Thank you. You will see an Onero site here in North Florida soon. If it's up to me. So she's ready to go out there and fight the fight.
That'd be great.
So Vicky, did we cover everything?
I think we covered about everything.
Yeah. So the only feedback that I can give you is that from my local, there's a Onero in Manhasset, and I met Narni. Is that her name, Belinda? Narni?
Marnie, yeah, Marnie in Manhasset, which ironically she grew up 30 minutes down the road from me, so you've got an Aussie over there.
Nazi. And she had gathered a bunch of physical therapists and Dr. McCormick and for an event where I met Belinda several months ago. So her clinic is in Manhasset, and she's really doing well with that. So that's another for New York people. Sometimes we think about the drive, what it takes. When I think about, oh, all right, now I could take the drugs. Now I'm not saying this is for everybody, but do I have an option of taking the drugs or driving an hour and then taking a class for an hour, driving home? Do I have 3 hours in my week, twice a week? That's a personal decision. That's something that I would do, but that's me. All right, now there are 8 new messages. Everybody's thanking you. They're very, very appreciative of all the detailed information. And you're back. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we should say goodbye for now. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Did you have fun, Belinda?
I did, yeah. I mean, I love talking about this stuff. It's just, I'm a bone tragic.
Last thing, there's one that snuck in. Somebody was asking about, so Mary Beth, unfortunately, this is in reference to Dr. Fishman's study. Unfortunately, the study was not well done, and its results are very controversial and unreliable as far as increasing BMD goes. But Belinda mentioned yoga is very good. Okay, so she's just talking about, I know that Dr. Fishman was up to a new study. I don't know the outcome of that, but okay, enough of that. So it's all about balance, right? We need to balance our life and not fall. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye for now, everybody. Thank you, everybody who stayed this long. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.